Hey now, it is Dan Eberhardt here, today's host of the Growing the Future podcast. We are back with season 4, episode 15. You can sign up for our newsletter at growingthefuturepodcast.ca to get emails about our new episodes and find all of our past episodes there. Please give us a follow on all the social media platforms out there on our YouTube channel. You can also find the Eberhardt family of companies online, starting with eberhardtfarms.com to learn more about our farming operation in Saskatchewan. Suregrowth.ca to learn about the precision agronomy consulting services that they offer there. Convergencegrowth.com, where they accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And last but not least, eberhardtagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. My next guest is truly an agricultural adventurer, from the fields of France to Iowa to Saskatchewan to Haiti and now to Montana. This man has traversed the globe to farm, to supply farms with equipment that they need, to support farming policy, to support the environment, and even to go as far as to teach what he knows about farming to those who are less fortunate, which I know culturally growing up wasn't something we advocated because we didn't want them to compete with us. Like, don't teach them what we know. He has chased harvests all across the American West. He has built an import-export business across 32 states to Europe and back. He grew an 1,800-acre wheat farm in Saskatchewan to 10,000 acres and right-sized it to 6,500 acres and sold it. He became involved in several nonprofit and advocacy groups related to farming, including the Indian Head Agricultural Research Foundation and the Saskatchewan Farm Stewardship Association. He served as chair of the Saskanola Board. He joined the executive committee of the Grain Growers of Canada, as well as the Canadian Canola Growers Association, and he began traveling around Canada and internationally as an envoy, learning about problems Canadian farmers faced and tried to provoke more favorable policies from the national government. I love that you tried to provoke. Inflammatory language, beware. Warning on this podcast. We shall provoke some change and some thought here and some conversation. After being named the Outstanding Young Farmer in Saskatchewan in 2011, he became vice president of that whole organization, meeting and working with young farmers who exemplified excellence in agriculture. In 2018, he sold his Saskatchewan farm after completing a mission trip with his wife and 4 children to Haiti to help farmers there use tractors more efficiently. I can only imagine the stories that could come out of that. He then purchased the Wheat Montana farm outside of Three Forks, Montana, to explore his interests in regenerative and nutritive agricultural techniques and, fulfill his desire to live amongst the consumers of the food that he raised. And maybe he got to meet John Dutton and ride around the ranch a little bit and hang out with Rip on the weekends and stuff. I guess we'll find out. Along with his wife, Carrie, and their 4 children, they rebranded the operation the Living Skies Farm, and today they're promoting advanced agricultural techniques to enhance the nutritive value of the grains they grow while also improving soil microbiology and carbon capture and moisture content. You can find this individual on Twitter, LinkedIn, or on their website, livingskygrains.com. Amazing website. Check it out. Today I'm going to talk to him about his whole global farming journey, how he is wanting to farm now after seeing all these different places and methods. Where did he land? And really, we want to talk about some policy that I think is shaping not only farmers' lives in a very serious way, but the people who like to eat and eat healthy and also stay warm. The whole energy food complex policy and everything. We're going to get into it. Welcome to the show, Franck Groeneweg.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. That's an introduction that just made me tired instantly right here.
I'm just exhausted reading about it. Not to mention flying, like he flew around and he's a pilot. He was in the army. I don't know what. Were you a treasure hunter? What did you found the treasure of Oak Island?
Your listeners are going to say, would this guy just sit down somewhere?
Would he just take a break?
Yeah,
are you tired, Frank?
What is that guy's carbon footprint? Really?
Yes. He says, it's a big plume of black oil coming out of his tail there, just going around the world doing all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank
You're
you.
like a celebrity, jet hopping. Yeah, it was actually really funny because I was sitting with Ron Cron visiting the other day, and he was talking about how you guys were at TPAP. And you were talking with some other. You flew down there, and you were talking with some other farmer or person. I was at TPAP, and you're like, "Oh, well, hey, you don't want to go? I think you went skiing somewhere. Like you just on a whim. You were both. Let's go to Colorado, or where was it?
But that was Grant Dick from
right.
Liverville.
That's who it was. I couldn't rember. It was Grant.
Yeah,
Dick.
well,
Grant
he's another character. I guess that would take a very long introduction. And he's just such an inspiration. And he said, well, how about we go ski to Taos? Oh, sure, let's do that. So we did, and we had a grand time. I mean, he's an amazing person. Yeah.
Well, good for you. And I really was thinking that a nap title to this episode surely has got to be, the agriculture adventurer. And if you ever start a TV series, it could be like the Anthony Bourdain of agriculture flying around. CNN would probably give you a show and then perhaps cancel you. Given some
funny that
views,
you say
but,
that. When we sold our farm, that was one of the options. Was we'd get a big enough plane and we'd go do the 52 weeks of agriculture around the world, and then we didn't. I guess we didn't do that, obviously. But if we would have, that would have been exactly at the time that COVID started. That would have been that would have been
a little
really
bit
good.
awkward.
Been difficult.
I really dislike watching people talk through a mask on TV personally. So I'm glad that's over because Formula One was tough. It was tough 2 years to get started in Formula One watching people talk through masks. But folks, Frank's a friend of mine and I just intellectual giant in my mind and just a true adventurer and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. And as I read his bio last night and this morning preparing for this show, I wasn't sure where we were going to go, but where I want to take you, dear listeners, I really just want to chunk down on Frank's history and go on this journey to where he is now so we can talk about some things that are relevant. But let's just start at the beginning. And my understanding is back in France, the whole impetus of moving to Iowa was to really broaden your horizons in agriculture. But my first fundamental question was why, and this is right in your bio, why wasn't farming taken as seriously as you would have liked in France, Frank?
Well, I think you got to go, and that's some of it. I would just that's my own feeling and somewhat thoughts of how that was. But you have to go back into history where farming was really a low profession, and there were the lords and there were the peasants, and the peasants were the people that were farming, and so I think it goes way back to that, that part. And then of course there were the revolutions and all this, and and so, but still farming stayed fairly low profession. And France is a fairly big country and a fairly strong agriculture powerhouse. So when you have abundance, well, then it becomes kind of taken for granted. And I think we're starting to see that out here. Farmers couldn't be smart enough to figure out this or that. They're just farmers, right? Which that was the idea in France. My family was always very passionate about agriculture, and so that was our whole life. When I was in school, I could only talk about that as a little kid, about tractors, and it just, my friends would always think that was the weirder. Why would you just be interested in that? That's a stupid occupation. And instead of being a kid that, well, they think that's stupid, I'm just gonna, go to their interests, I just doubled down. and so I wasn't interested in sports or anything when I was in, playing soccer or anything, through some school, PE stuff. I was a tall kid and fairly, athletic looking. Not athletic, but athletic looking.
Give the impression, anyways.
Yeah, and they'd go picking teams, and you'd have the two best people, trying to pick a team. Well, I'd be picked the guy with the two last little girls, and I didn't care. I was,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but then
That
I
wasn't
would
your
be on
thing.
the soccer field, and then somebody would just throw, there'd be a tractor plowing beside, and I'd be interested in that versus that. So, to go all along with that is, it was just not. It was always denigrated, a denigrated profession. And so when that I think that's the explanation. It goes way back in history, and people had plenty. There were episodes during the wars where they lacked, but not so much in France. Probably more into other countries.
Well, let's be fair. I think that's a fairly common sentiment around the world almost now, especially when in modern North America, I mean, farmers are what, 2% of the population. So
Yeah.
I don't even think consumers know enough to think about it, frankly, one way or another at this point. Whether it'd be interesting to know how they view that in relation to other professions. But it seems like you've been a change seeker all your life,
Mm-hmm.
chasing after that change. So why then did you feel the need to move from France to America?
So that passion, that background passion of agriculture, wanted to see wide open spaces. I've always been interested in big equipment. I would collect brochures of farm equipment and big tractors, all that stuff. So, and the America was the place where that stuff was. I mean, you'd see the odd picture in a farm magazine. I mean, we didn't have internet, of course, at the time. You couldn't just Google this or that. You'd see a 4-wheel drive tractor one time, and then this is cool, man. This is so, and just wanted to see wide open spaces in America, and that's what got me to want to go check Iowa out.
How did you get to be importer, exporter of equipment and parts, and what did you learn on that journey?
Oh man, so when I went to Iowa, I liked it so much, and I liked so much the background of agriculture there and how agriculture was so taken seriously, like I said, and I decided I wanted to farm there, but you just don't say, hey, I'll just I got $50 here, I'll just start mega farm. How about that? I should have it done by next year, right? I went to Northwest Iowa, and I found some people with the same last name, and they kind of adopted me as a family, and somewhat. And
Nice.
one of the things that was really interesting is I went to Iowa for the idea of like the wide open spaces and farming, but I stayed for the people. I just loved the mentality of like some of the can-do. The North American mentality is more of a can-do attitude. Is like, okay, we have a problem, let's figure it out and let's fix it. And versus like, oh, we can't do it. So when I was in Northwest Iowa, I was working for farmers, and I wanted to get going farming on my own, but it was pretty much impossible. So you got to start somewhere. I started to actually work in a dairy from 10 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning, and then from France, I'd hear some people were looking for John Deere parts or Case IH rotary combine parts, and I thought, well, you know what? I'll just put an ad in the French paper, and American equipment parts. And the thing is, well, there's generally 7 hours of difference and time zone, right? So yeah, I'd come back from milking cows at 2 in the morning, and I'd get calls because it was 9 o'clock in the morning in France. I'd get calls, and so they'd be looking for an engine kit or rub bars or different things, and I put something together, a price on a fax machine.
Wow.
And
That's old school.
yeah, so then I start to sell internationally that way, and of course, some things worked and some didn't, and from then on, the dollar exchange actually worked good at the time, but that stuff fluctuates back and forth, as I found out at the time. This 18-year-old. You find out a lot of things in a hurry. and so when it turned around, started importing parts from the Czech Republic for Zetor tractors, and that's when that business actually took off. And yeah, we were selling into 32 states when we sold that business.
Well, you must have made some fantastic relationships, hey?
Oh yeah, yeah, and
And you sold that business,
actually,
eh?
yeah, that was the craziest thing. There are so many things to that.
So tell us about the relationships and tell us a little bit about the sale.
Oh, well, so the sale was actually because sorry, I guess
that's okay.
Yes.
Audience.
So yeah, some interruption, but
that's okay.
No, we're good.
That's no worries.
So the sale happened is because at the time we were looking at we were moving to Saskatchewan. We had made an offer on a farm in Saskatchewan, and that's what precipitated the sale of the precipitated. I mean, I wanted to farm so badly, right? And it was pretty much impossible to do it in Northwest Iowa. We were farming like 100 acres. I was working for other farmers, exchange for labor, for equipment, and stuff like that. And we had this parts business, but it was not my passion. It was something that was it was an opportunity, and it was a good one. And so when our offer was accepted on that Saskatchewan farm, it's like, well, what are we doing with this business? Because it'll probably be a little harder to do it from Canada, and we'll have less time to do it. And really, that's not exactly what we want to keep doing anyway. So we had a lady that was helping us putting orders together, packaging, and she had seen that this was a kind of a neat little business, and she said her brother was from Arkansas and was looking for something like that. So we got in touch, and we kind of looked into what the value of the business according to the sales and how much, some multiplication of the sale number, and he thought, yeah, that was okay, and he could put some cash down on it, and which we had a little bit of debt on it. The cash kind of paid the debt, and whatever was left, he paid us over 2 years. That worked awesome because as you start a farm or anything else, you really don't have any extra cash. So that gave us the grocery money for the next 2 years on that Saskatchewan farm. and that's how that works. So, I mean, in some ways, you kind of look at that and you say, well, even from a spiritual standpoint, I guess we take steps. You go forward, you make leaps of faith. And then you look, okay, is there going to be a road? Is there going to be a road under my feet, or am I going to be free falling? And you can be assured that if you go free falling, there'll still be a net somewhere.
He fills in the blanks, doesn't he?
He fills in the blanks, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to go carelessly in there. I mean, there's something, but you can kind of take stock of your environment, look forward, and say, all right, well, what's the worst thing could happen here? And there's, amidst all the setbacks that we've had, most of the best opportunities comes from the worst setbacks. So there's opportunity in chaos. And I guess when you've tasted that, sometimes you want to go create some chaos so you can find opportunity, right? And maybe sometime I'm a little too good at that.
You seem to revel in it, and I can kind of relate and I think that's a very entrepreneurial trait. And I think once you learn how to look at everything that comes along, like, hey, do I really know if this is bad? I mean, sure, it seems bad, and it's sort of burning to the ground right now. On the other hand, this could be the raw material for the best change that ever takes place. And what an amazing confluence of events that you had this business that you could sell. You had some international experience. You wanted to farm. You met your wife, your lovely wife, Carrie, is from Alberta.
Yes.
And so you had this Western Canadian connection, and you found out that land in Saskatchewan was relatively productive and plentiful and cheap. So what was it like to make an offer on 1,800 acres and get farming in a big way and grow that farm to 10,000 acres in Saskatchewan? That
was totally incredible. It was something that it seemed like a dream, a dream come true, no doubt. And what was even more crazy, let's say, was that there was so much available. And when we were putting that offer, we're looking at farms in the early 2000s. It seemed like the whole province of Saskatchewan was for sale. You just cross the border at whatever from the U.S. border, and they just didn't have enough money to say whole province for sale, and I didn't have enough money for the sign, I think. I mean,
there was land that didn't get farmed in that time. That's why I
Yes.
started selling spares, and I remember land in Saskatchewan going fallow. Nobody wanted to farm it.
We go look at a farm, and then you see a neighbor along the road, and you just want to talk. Hey, how's it going? And then it's kind of like, my farm's for sale too, And then you start to think, just about freak out, because what's going on here? Is what's hidden here that we don't know? And so the opportunities were just completely amazing. I mean, they had sent their kids to get an education, and they went to Calgary and stayed there because they had good work ethics, and they didn't come back. So these were the early 2000s. And so to put an offer on a farm and to be accepted, and to put the financing together and get equipment, these were things that were, in some ways they were really hard, but they were actually very easy in the same way. Everything kind of came together, and we were that young couple that was nuts. Like, what's wrong with these people that want to farm this land? And they either people would come on the yard, a salesperson, and they'd see my wife, and they'd say, "Can I talk to your dad?" Because they couldn't think that a young couple would start here. Like how would they do it? I'm not sure.
What was the response of the community?
Very welcoming.
You?
Oh, very welcoming. Because and I think some of it was they had hopes that maybe we'd buy their farm over time. There was a little bit of that. I mean, some of it.
Yeah.
And so, but just super welcoming. I remember after our first harvest, somebody they did a welcome party, and we had invited neighbors over, just one couple for the evening. And they basically made it that they invited the whole community, and they brought chairs, and they brought food, and we had a grand old time, and it was excellent. Yeah, that was we started there just in a really interesting fashion that way. Yeah, with all kinds of opportunity.
So the story was that you took some of these funds from the sale of Green Atlantic, and you doubled down in Saskatchewan. I can only imagine, you get a little bit of wind behind your sails, and you're finally farming, and you went to 10,000 acres. But I remember vividly too, on our farm, the frost of 2004. And that was the impetus behind my brother putting together advisory board to go to the bank with a plan about how they were going to move ahead, because all of the equity that my father and my mother had acquired at that point was at risk, because there was no crop to go in the bin. So, and they had expanded too. So tell us a little bit about how you got through that, what happened, and how you applied your entrepreneurial skills to talking about adversity to get through that. You sold stoves on TV.
Yeah.
I want to see, is there an infomercial somewhere?
Really come back to that event of the frost, briefly, is that, we had started that 1,800 acre farm in 2003, and 2003 was a bit of a dry year, but it was okay. So in 2004, what we do, we just doubled the farm, right? Because that's the thing you want to do, right? And we had the chance to rent another, whatever, there was 1,600 acres, and the equipment they did a little bit, but we're doing, good. And so 2004 comes along, super beautiful growing crop, just but late and a little bit cool and stuff, and then 6 hours of frost, August the 19th, 2004, and took the crop down from something awesome to something just basically was just kind of worthless. I mean, some of it was okay, but most of it was bad. So that took us for a huge loop. And I remember it was a $180,000 loss. That's kind of what it was. And it looked like it was going to be a career to make that up. It looked like, we'd make it up, but it just would take forever. And so, going along well, coming the next year, well, it's always when you get a problem, it never is right away. It takes time to unravel because you got a little cash flow from the past. And so people always think like, oh, right away, that's when you're going to have a problem. Well, no, it's the year after that happens, when everything vanishes, right? So, 2005 was kind of okay. by '06 we were in real trouble. And what happened, what we did is we ended up actually custom farming the acres that we had rented. And we started this grain burning stove business. There were other ideas. Maybe I'd go into real estate. I remember buying a real estate learning kit. There were three ideas. I can't remember the third one. But anyway, we had gone on a trip to France for Christmas. And my uncle had a grain burning stove in his living room that supposedly was made in Canada, and I didn't know anything about it. So I looked in, I researched it, and it was made in Minnesota, but calling it a Canadian stove in France made it sound like, because if it can heat in Canada, it definitely can heat in France, right? And it was a corn stove, so but you could burn wheat in it. So we looked into it a little more, and we were able to get the distributorship for that. And we started to go to farm shows, and grain was $2 a bushel, and Hurricane Katrina had just happened, and natural gas were going up about 40%. And all in once, we were just selling stoves left and right. And we had a TV ad that CTV put together that people they loved, and we only had enough money to maybe run it 4 times a week or so. Well, they loved it so much they plugged it in every little blank spot that they had. So we were all in once. We just be in a grocery store, and people say, "Are they kind of these people?" Like,
wow,
we weren't signing autographs.
Is that on the internet? Like, is that on YouTube or anything? We can.
I have it. I probably could give you I got it. I looked at it a while back. I got a link somewhere. It's really neat. But anyway, we got started with that, and what it did is that it really didn't make a lot of money, but it gave us credibility to our creditors, and kind of felt that, okay, well, this guy is at least trying something from custom farming the land that we're rented to doing that. Then we were just barely able to, scrape by, make it work, and make good on our debts and different things. But that was a time where, the big banks were actually getting out of agriculture because it was not. It was not good. All the main banks were doing that. So we found ourselves at a spot where on a spreadsheet somewhere, somebody in Toronto said everybody under that goes out. And we had to deal with it. Was a gruesome time. But in the end, it worked out. And what was the most amazing part of it is by 2006 was maybe a little better year on farming, but not great. And for commodity prices were still kind of poor, but we had really cut down our costs on everything. And the stove business was doing okay. And by '07, when commodity prices came up, then we're doing better. But also the premise behind that, our grain burning stove business was doing great, and people say, why don't you just do that instead of farming? And we didn't move to Canada to just sell stoves. We moved to farm, and that's what we want to do. This is a neat little business here, but this is not what we want to keep doing. So and everybody was saying that, and in the back of my mind I said, if you can burn grain, it's like when to cure low prices, you have to have low prices, and to cure high prices, you have to have high prices. Well, when you can start to burn grain for energy, sooner or later, there's going to be people that are going to try to find ways. And that was the ethanol boom, and you could burn corn and make ethanol out of it and all this. And that's what made the whole demand part of it. And that's how our prices went up. And all in once, well, by 2007, commodity prices started to go up. We started to have some good crops. '08 was very good. And actually by '08 we were back in the black. And so something that we thought it'd take a whole career to make up for. It took us basically 2 years, and we see again, I would say God's faithfulness into saying, you'll be fine. Just take a leap of faith, and there's a net underneath. Yeah. Don't just jump anywhere because if you jump recklessly, you're really gonna get hurt.
Well, they talk about entrepreneurship in terms of, hey, these are the folks that have the ability to jump off a cliff and build a plane literally on the way down.
On the way down.
And I've seen you do it. I've literally seen you do it since I've known you. It's like, hey, Frank's selling his farm and moving to Montana, and we'll get there. But what an interesting backdrop to consider as well with the current geopolitical food/energy complex to think of where we were in the early 2000s, where literally land in Saskatchewan wasn't getting farmed because it wasn't economical, and burning grain in stoves literally, physically was economical. And I want to get to that global perspective and talk a little bit more about all that in policy. But there was an event in 2018 that had a really big impact on you, and that was the premature passing of your sister-in-law. That really made you think about where you wanted to go with things and the future of your children. How did that impact what you were building in the world, Frank?
It changed. Yeah, it definitely changed things. And I mean, it's one of these events that probably in somebody that's touching that 40 years old or for a little over, just kind of gets to, okay, what is this all about? And we had built our farm. It was that's what we're doing. We're just kind of keep trying to improve and different things. And then all in once we just felt that what is this all about? There were different things even in the neighborhood, let's say, that was that were just land prices that escalated to a point where it just didn't seem to make sense. But my sister-in-law passed away from a very stupid freak accident in their backyard, and leaving my brother and then 3 kids that were like 6, 4, and 2. And it was, wow, life can change that quickly like that. And instinctively, but until you're totally reminded by an event just really close, right? But I was already, there was something in the back of my mind just kind of was nagging at me that, maybe that it'd be time for a change, but how and so on. So how would we do that? We also had, just before that, we were planning to go on this agriculture education development thing in Haiti. We had planned that before that event happened. And so that event happened. I came back from France from that funeral, went to the agribition in Regina with a friend of mine. He was our crop input supplier, and we went together there, and we walked onto a booth that of a realtor, and I started to kind of talk about the macro things that were happening. Not so much. No, I didn't talk about what I had just lived or through this funeral, but. Like the macroeconomics, felt that land prices were going up, felt that interest rates had been down for a long time. Sooner or later, we had to just go, that had to escalate. And how would we do this? And we could see some of the bigger farms that weren't there like 10 years before that were really aggressive. When you think, why weren't they aggressive when it was all available? So, I mean, there's kind of a saying, like, when everybody walks, just run, and when everybody runs, walk. Mm-hmm. And I felt like they were running. When I was running, they were walking, and now they are running. Maybe it's time to walk. And I guess we walked, maybe.
That's where the opportunity lies. Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes total sense.
Yeah. So back. Yeah. So what was your question?
Well, I think it was the catalyst of what happened. Maybe that made you think about where you're going and what you were doing, and all those little things put together. You made a really big change. And you did something, I guess, that like most of us conventionally would find rather shocking, is you sold a nice parcel of land in God's country in Regina, Saskatchewan,
Yeah.
and you didn't even know what the other side of the jumping over the cliff looked like, if there really was one. But I needed to ask you. So we sort of went over why you sold the farm. You gave some reasons why you sold the farm in Canada. But what did the voyage of Lewis and Clark have to do with your next decision? Like, how did you get to where you next went?
Well, that's maybe a little bit further, but where I was going about this whole agribition thing is that that realtor called me a couple of weeks later and said, "Would you sell your farm?" And I said, "No." Like, what? Like, get off my back. And he said, "Well, I could put a price together and see, And he ended up doing that, and it actually just completely floored me what he was looking at. And I started to just think, well, maybe it is time for a change. But then, what are the neighbors going to think? And all this stuff goes through your mind. And really, yeah, what else are we gonna do? Well, we could do all kinds of things, but yeah, you just want to do something. So. You want to do something fulfilling, and so we did this Haiti trip. Like I said, had been planned before, but that was a little bit of a time where we figured, okay, these are maybe something we could do. We had an opportunity to maybe manage a big farm out there for maybe 5 years, or assemble a big farm together and manage it for 5 years and hand it to the locals. At the end, we had that opportunity. We looked at that, and as it turned out, then the instability just got bigger and bigger. And today, Haiti is in such a turmoil. It'd be very difficult to be there with as a family and to be there safely, right? So there was some of that. There was just we had a chance to go on to be managers of a farm in Uganda, and there was an investment required to do that, and looked at it as well. Well, we didn't go there, but looked at the opportunity, and I was looking at farms online all over the world, whether it was Kazakhstan or Uruguay or whatever it was, and I just I spent some time on the couch, and I just stand up and say, "Kids, we're moving to blank place." And then they would roll their eyes, and then another one of Daddy's crazy ideas. But maybe when you say the voyage of Lewis and Clark, I guess these people went into uncharted territory, and they just figured out a way, and they were adventurers, and they were amazing people that just braved the elements, and they found out a lot of things. So there was a farm in Montana for sale. It had just kind of fit a lot of the bills, and some of it too is like I wanted to actually slow down a bit. We had been running, and we've been running just for 15 years, and just ups and downs and different things, and it had been good, but still, now maybe we should just back off just a bit, or actually a fair bit. So that farm in Montana was actually kind of just maybe even a little bit boring. and we looked at it, and we didn't quite like it, and the realtor said, "Hey, there's one right beside it that's really interesting. It's a quiet listing. It's a Wheat Montana farm." And I didn't know much about the Wheat Montana farm, but I looked it up, and then the owner had a video of kind of his life story online, and I should send you a link to that. And when I saw that, it gave me goosebumps. I said, "That's it." I showed it to the family. They kind of said, well, they rolled their eyes, and they kind of said, "Oh yeah, Dad." So anyway, when we looked at the farm on foot, we just got on the yard. Our family was all in, and that's what it takes. It takes buy-in from the whole clan, right? Because they really had thought I had gone off the deep end by deciding that we should sell, and that was it was not an easy thing at all. But yeah, everything kind of worked out too on that side, much like our tractor parts business, from 15, 18 years before that. It all worked out in Saskatchewan. It worked out excellent. We had an auction, so we bought this farm in Montana. which is right beside the headwaters of the Missouri River, where Lewis and Clark really claimed victory over their voyage, is that they had found like the headwaters of the Missouri. And the little tidbit that was kind of interesting is the one time we went on a trip with just we were looking at a piece of land that the previous owner had farmed, and we thought maybe we could rent that. So, and it overlooks the whole valley of Three Forks, like the three rivers coming together. That's what it's called, Three Forks. The Gallatin, the Jefferson, and the Madison come together. It's a gorgeous area. And he said, from here, you actually can't see a whole lot of development, and it's probably a vantage point that Lewis and Clark saw. It's just so beautiful. I said, and isn't that something that the U.S. bought the Louisiana Purchase? That huge piece of land from getting from Louisiana up into Montana. They bought that from France, and then I said, do you realize what price the Louisiana Purchase? And he said, yeah, I kind of know. And do you realize that your farm price is about as much? He said, yeah, I guess it is.
Wow.
And then he says, and then he said to sell it back to a Frenchman.
The irony. Things always come full circle, don't they?
Yeah,
that's a great view of history, and you landed smack dab in the middle of these adventurers in your home country. And now you're doing some very interesting things with the farm, and you're taking things in an interesting direction. But I wanted to know some of what you talk about, and we've talked about it as well, how you want to farm and what you think farming could be to people that consume food. But how do you make this leap from you want to produce food in a way that actually impacts people's mental health in a positive way? I thought that was interesting. Tell me about that.
Well, I guess that's the goal, and you always got to put something fairly high goal, so at least you can at least get somewhere in the middle, but hopefully to catch that goal. But if you weren't, at least you got a long ways toward it, right? And I'm not saying that it's an impossible goal. I think it is. It's basically looking at farming more in a natural way. I didn't say an organic way. I said a natural way. Looking at nature. It would, you look at somebody like the Wright brothers. They were bicycle shop owners that are credited to have invented the airplane, right? And they actually looked at birds, or Leonardo da Vinci, they looked at nature and said, hey, how does this thing fly, right? And so I think we have to look, we've been too obsessed with, and actually science was actually looked at, what is from nature, and this is how we come with science. Now we've got our own version of science that we've kind of invented science now, and we hardly look at nature anymore, because we've got it figured out, and nature is stupid, right? And so until you start to really delve into it, and I think as farmers, we've been a little more kind of the recipe kind. You put so much seed in the ground, you put so much fertilizer, and then you go take care of the weeds, and so you got this recipe that which works wonderful and has been a wonderful producer of quantities of food and safe quantities of food, and I'll take nothing away from that. I think we can go back and maybe find a place in the middle where maybe we just foster nature, foster biology, and there's plenty of evidence and actually research from the past that has actually been somewhat forgotten, that shows we could produce food with much less, and not only that, we could use less. So you could use less fertilizer, quite a bit less pesticides, and have a product that possibly has more nutrient density. So how do we, that's the quest that I'm on for that, and it's just not elusive. I mean, so I think some people have looked at me in the past and plenty of times said this guy's a dreamer, and it's, and I probably sometimes come out as a little bit like that, as the idealistic, and probably sometime rightfully so, that people could say that, but there is so much evidence. So many people right now have done some incredible things, boosting biology, just looking at the plant roots, looking at the right varieties, maybe lowering some of our seeding rates, and have some people have pretty much gone away from fertilizers and are able to grow some great crops. They're not organic people; they are regenerative. That's kind of what they, and so somebody says, "Oh, we got to define that. We got to say, well, we got to make sure this is a set of practice, and we got to certify that." Well, why would we do that? It's not working on the organic side of it. All you do is, when you put rules, is you have somebody that's going to say, "Hey, how can I just go around the rules?" And even on the spiritual side of it, it's kind of the same thing. Is when you put rules, then people are going to try to find a way to look like they're doing the rules without doing them. How about we go to the spot where you want to do the rules? You want to, and the rules of nature, you want to say, okay, well, this is what nature is showing me that it does. When you have a certain amount of microbe and fungi around your roots, this is what the plant expresses itself. We didn't put it like a certain level that you should have. You should have like so many grams, micrograms of biomass for that. And at that point, you're regenerative. No, the point is just let's try to always do better. And at the end, there is also plenty of evidence now that some of the produce that are there have more nutrient density. So one guy will say, well, that's complete BS. That can't be. All you have to do is, I guess, give them a tomato grown from a garden versus a store-bought one, or a strawberry grown, and there's a taste difference. Well, why is there a taste difference? Well, it's basically extra nutrients. It's these what's defined as plant secondary metabolites. And you see it in if you eat healthy yourself, and you take care of some of your what you eat, and do a little bit of exercise, you're gonna look good, or feel good, look healthy. If you start to really push it, and you start to do more exercise and stuff, well, now you can probably look like you're built, you're muscular and stuff. And I think that's the difference right there.
That's an incredible treatise on the whole organic, regenerative, conventional farming that, frankly, I've never considered that approach. And I was on the train of, hey, we need to define this and set rules around this so people get compensated for doing such. But you alluded to the bigger purpose and the why, both from a spiritual aspect of rule-based living versus having a strong purpose and doing it out of coming from a positive place. And you're doing it in such a way right now, like you're not technically getting incentivized as such, but you're finding the economic impetus to farm the way you're farming. But you are closer to the community that is consuming your food with the milling and the baking. What did it mean to you to be producing something for the community in the community versus producing a commodity that went off to the elevator and you never saw that again?
I think it's it gives you a stronger responsibility of doing a good job, because I'm not saying that taking a grain truck, going to the elevator and leaving it there, and that one is going to go halfway around the world, is giving you less, is going to give you a pass to say, well, I can do anything and I can produce some really bad stuff. I'm not saying that. I still think there's you're still going to try to do your best no matter what. But by the time you have Mrs. Harris on the other side that says, hey, I love your flower. And at that point, you're working for Mrs. Harris.
Nice.
and now your whole crop, even though that Mrs. Harris is going to get a few pounds of it, well, now your thousands of bushels have to be, for that customer just for a few pounds of it. And if it's, and then it's a number of customers that are there for that. And it's also my family that have flour or canola oil. So it is important to do, and it helps you maybe being more intentional in that journey.
So when we talk about rules maybe not being as effective as they could be, is that why you got involved in advocacy and different boards and going around the world even and talking about this? Or was there a different reason?
Yeah, I suppose, well, it's you never, I guess, start. Often you start something, you don't exactly know where it's going to end up, I guess. When we were looking at a farm in Saskatchewan, went to the Indian Head, ag station there to get some information, and I thought that was really valuable. And went to a lot of their field days until in once in a while they're saying, hey, we need some directors, and say, hey, that could be interesting. I could at least, from one standpoint is I could learn more, but I could also give back of that time. And I remember even at that, so I got on that board and I got to become chair. And at the time, it was like the 100-year anniversary of the Indian Head Ag Research Station. And the deputy ag minister came, and to me, it was like, oh, just look at this. I mean, we're 100 years ago, they developed that station, and it was for needs of trying to make sure that farming was thriving. And it did that. It helped me even 90 years later, it did that to me. So how do I give back? Really, how do we define it for the next 100 years? And I think a lot of great things were happening then and are still happening at that station. There were times actually they wanted to close, the federal government wanted to close down some of that. And you start to wonder, okay, how do we as a group of producers, how do we pull it back and bring it together so it can still serve that purpose? There were some of these discussions, but from there on, it was... Saskatchewan was looking for directors. Yeah, how about that? Actually, one of my motivation was to become a director on the Canadian Wheat Board.
Nice.
And effect some change there. Well, I guess and I thought Saskatchewan would be a great transition to that, to be able to just understand some of the lay of the land of the policy and get some board experience that was a little higher experience on that. And then the Canadian Wheat Board went away anyway. And the whole thing still was then you kind of get sucked into a vacuum and then we need a delegate to the Canadian canola growers. Oh well, then why not? Let's do that. Oh, and then we can have a delegate to the grain growers of Canada, and why not? And here we go, we're in 2010, and our farm is about 10,000 acres. We got one full-time employee, and I'm gone 60 days a year, mainly in the winter. I was on the executive of three of these organizations, and I learned tremendous lot. It was awesome, but I also could feel like it was actually hurting the farm at home as well. It was starting, and the family was young, and I pulled back some, finished some terms, and actually kind of made it back to the farm. But I had the opportunity to go on 2 trade missions to India, one with our ag minister at the time, Lal Stewart, and one with Brad Wall, our premier. And it was really interesting. To me, it actually brought it to, you talk about that link to the consumer being close, and it did that to me, except it was halfway around the world, and on the Mumbai port right there on the docks and we had yellow peas being unloaded from a vessel, and they were still, that was in March, they were still freezing cold from Canada, and they were being unloaded in these warehouses by hand, and you can see here's the customer, and these people eat our things, and that's at that point why you need all these rules, phytosanitary rules, because they have to make up for that responsibility that you have to the consumer, is that they have to know, they don't know Frank or like the thousands of farmers that are producing these peas. And so that advocacy, that okay, let's go promote our product, because it's still a personal thing. If you go as a trade delegation to a country out there, and you're a likable person, and you portray a sense of care for the product that you put, and not only that, but you can actually substantiate it by saying these are the farming practices we do, and we care for that, we clean our equipment, do all these things, so here are some pictures of my farm. And now you have all these buyers on the other side that are the movers and shakers of the industry. If you can just give them that reassurance that is important, you're going to be on the top of the list as a country, not as Frank or the people that made it there. And that's why it's so important to have to have these trade missions, and to have the right people on there. Hopefully I was the right person at the time. I definitely gave it my best, and when I see on Twitter some of these guys that are going out there, and I'm incredibly thankful for the work they do. No matter if now I'm in the U.S., it doesn't matter. They're still, even though they're gonna pitch Team Canada, and now I'm in the U.S., it's still they're promoting what we do as farmers, and we're doing a very noble profession that advances humanity. Everything we do it does that.
Well, I just had an incredible realization there that much like at times we are frustrated with consumers that don't understand our business and how fundamental it is to their life, and sometimes we might refer to them as idiots or various other monikers that aren't so kind. We as farmers, we maybe have a disconnect between our consumers, and we maybe don't know them as well as we could, to be fair. So that's maybe something to reflect on.
Well, no doubt. I mean, that's been like the thing, is that tell your story. And I mean, probably that was the goal of going on Twitter, was to try to, make that kind of that forum to try to reach consumers well. And I guess what a failure on that side, because before you know, you find yourself in the echo chamber, and now you're talking farming with all these people around. I mean, it's a failure on the original goal. Well, then, but still, in the end, I guess it's still, I guess I wish from maybe the farm organization part of it is that we'd have maybe more, maybe feel good videos, or like right now, the TV age is kind of gone, but still, even the TV would still be there to do some of that, doing some interviews of different farmers here and there. But the thing is that we're not very, like, the companies are Coca-Cola and all that. They're spending millions of dollars all the time on advertising, and farmers don't need that. We just do a good job anyway. They should know it. Well,
Yeah.
and probably there could be bigger budgets on that side to just portray that, and not portray it in a too sweet of a form and of unrealistic form. Because often it goes into having the old tractor in the barn in the back, but just to have that reassurance that this is what we do.
Something that I wanted to ask you about with your perspective, that's been on my mind lately, is really the big fundamental disconnect between global thinking, policy, and human beings' needs, which are food and energy. And we are going into a winter where some pretty popular pundits that I would really respect and think are are quite on the mark, like Peter Zehan or Jordan Peterson, are saying, hey, we have these global elitists that are pushing this agenda that's so climate change driven, that congratulations, you're going to push a bunch of poor people into being cold and hungry this winter. Some are saying over 1 billion people amidst the war, and we've just had pestilence. Now you have famine. Historically, apparently they go together, but it boggles my mind both on the energy, but also food is intertwined with energy. You know, all the canola crushing plants that are coming in Saskatchewan, they're going to be demanding so much of the producers in the land to create energy. But like policy wise, why is it that they want to inhibit some of the best farmers in the world? I know most people listening will think I'm talking about Canada, and I am as well, but the Dutch farmers had to go into the streets such that they're getting shot at by the authorities. Maybe you don't see all that stuff on the news because it's a jilted view of the world, unfortunately. But when farmers finally take up arms, it's for a pretty damn good reason, because it's expensive to drive your tractor down Main Street, X amount of thousands of kilometers from home and get shot at by the authorities. Or we've seen it with the Freedom Convoy here in Canada. We're seeing it in the Netherlands. And this is at a time when a major part of the human population may experience hunger on a scale that we haven't really seen maybe ever. And not just hunger, but being cold. And that whole food energy complex is wrapped up together. And we don't have the technology to make the leap to say, oh, well, just turn on your wind power or your solar power or your feel-good Tesla battery or whatever. We need this. So why is it that it seems to me like everything in humanity, including food and warmth, is being sacrificed at the altar of this supposed climate crisis? Talk to me.
Wow.
Is that fair? Is that,
how much time we got? Well, there's a lot to unpack here. I think I think it kind of goes back to our the start of our conversation and why is farming actually. I think now in North America, farming is starting to be taken a little bit like it was when I was a kid in France. We're not there yet in North America, but these people couldn't know what they're doing, so we got to tell them what to do. And I think also a lot of the leaders that are just looking at this whole climate change thing, they actually think they won't be the ones that are going to be impacted by that. So I don't think they understand the whole the whole picture of it. Or so in the end, I guess if 1 billion people die of hunger somewhere, well, it's not in my backyard. I think there's a very calloused, very cold reaction to that. And in some ways, maybe to be a little more charitable, maybe they actually think, it won't happen anyway. That how could it be like, it will be fine, I think. That's what they feel like. So there's some of that that's happening. On the part of fertilizer reductions, let's say in Canada, of that 30%, I truly believe it's completely possible. And they say, well, actually, I shouldn't have said fertilizer reduction by 30%, but really, to me, it's kind of a play on words somewhat. You're going to reduce your emission by 30%, and possibly you could do it without reducing your fertilizer use, possibly by some of the practices and stuff. But still, the quickest way is actually to reduce it by your fertilizer by 30%, and you should somewhat have something that happens. And I think the problem here is a problem of carrot and stick. Right now, what we're doing is that we're saying, here, you're gonna reduce it by 30%, otherwise that, and that's the stick approach. And versus saying, hey, what if here's the carrot, you're gonna have soils that are healthier, maybe better water infiltration, which means better water storage, and you'll be able to grow a crop just as good a crop, maybe a better crop with 30% less fertilizer. Now I can just about get the eye rolls from your listeners right here. Like, what is he talking about? As if that is possible. And yeah, I was there too. Like 5 years ago, I would have said like, this is impossible. So why are we just kind of pushing this along on down people's throat? That's what we have to do. And in the Netherlands, they've actually been doing that for a long time, trying to reduce and doing all that. They've been under such stringent regulations forever, and now it's really the straw that's breaking the camel's back. And there's also these ideas in the Netherlands that it's actually coming from higher power, namely the WEF and some really dubious motives and different things, and which you could treat as conspiracy, but there are things also that make you think like, yeah, they may not be wrong either. So to me, I just I'm going a little bit all over the place, but I think we can actually reduce our fertilizer use, and we can reduce our emissions, and we can store more carbon in the ground, and all these are great things. So instead of like in an earlier part of a conversation, instead of putting rules with that, how about we enable research? And I think a lot of the problem is that we've got big ag that has been too much too influencing of the research out there. It's proven that over time, some of the land-grant universities in the U.S., if you wanted to do some kind of natural project, somebody like Elaine Ingham or different, very prominent researchers into the natural side of things, they wanted to do a research project, and they weren't able to get plots because, this big name company had to have all the plots. Well, then you basically focus your research on always finding something that's gonna confirm the bias out there. So I think, how about we start to just go more into the nature part of it, do the right research on that, and take the farmers' hands into figure out, this is what we can do. Okay, well then, and that's going to help my farm, and that's going to help the environment. Oh yeah, why not? Why wouldn't we do that? I think just beating it onto them, all they're going to try to do is just not do it, or they're going to try to find a way to go around it and probably try to pollute more in the process. Which that's sad. Like there's a way to do it. Why did we do zero till? How did that take on? Don't you think there was a whole lot of people that were saying this will never work, and it took some people to just try and make tests, and that's where we're at today, and it's helped a tremendous lot.
Oh man, that's a really positive view of the future, and I agree. I think that just by virtue of the fact, like if you continue to use some practices that don't at least maintain, if not improve the land, which I think is all the farmers' goals, is to make that asset more profitable and fruitful for the future, for generations to come. That in itself will work against everybody's best intentions. And then I do believe too, when the city folk and the politicians and the celebrities, of course the politicians and celebrities last, will experience a little bit of duress. Hungry people are not happy people. It doesn't take much hunger to incite a lot of migration, war, theft, and various other less than desirable humankind traits that manifest quite early on in that process. I mean, just imagine, even in Brandon, the people that can't get, can't afford some of these basics anymore, doesn't make for a healthy, fruitful life to be productive without those basics. Like if you want people to be productive, give them cheap energy and cheap food.
That's, environmental sustainability starts with financial sustainability. That's where it starts. And if you're going to do something solely for its virtual signaling part of it, well, it's bound to fail. It just has to start with people taking care of and their really basic needs, and then after that, they will take on the rest of it.
Well, things could really change dramatically, because we might have people from my spiritual homeland that I consider home, Germany, may be burning wood this winter. They're gathering it right now, and I don't mean to be coy or facetious, or I take no joy in that, but that's what I have heard. That, I mean, you shut that tap off, man. That's for real. In a place like Germany or Canada, it's cold, cold AF.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, sometimes that's what it takes. It's just you push it too far the other way, and I mean, that's that pendulum swinging, and sometimes it's always tough when it goes so far one way, because it always has to go so far the other way.
No, I mean, we could talk so much farther about so many topics, and I wish we had more time for that. But I really did just want to hear your story in depth, because I knew it in principle. What a true agricultural adventurer that you are. And Ron Cron and I were talking about you the other day, because I told him you were coming on the podcast, and you guys are friends. I forget how we got on the topic, but he said, yeah, that's... Because I said, what makes a man and his family, pursue like global farming? Because it's not that easy to farm, let alone move multiple times and build and rebuild and sell. But he said, Frank is an adventurer. And I thought about it. I thought, that is it. And that's why, and many entrepreneurs, it goes hand in hand. Many entrepreneurs that I know that have that set of genes, whatever it is, like to fly. And you certainly like to fly and get there quickly and go from place to place. And I think it behooves anyone that travels and learns and listens and speaks after listening, to the extent that you have, because perspective eventually grows and breeds wisdom. And I think you're a wise man. And I can't wait to spend a little bit more time with you in trade shows and stuff like that, and see you again, around the racetrack of agriculture here. But just to wrap things up, Frank, if we were to have this show and do a sequel 3 years from now, for you personally and professionally, what has to happen in the next 3 years for you to feel like a success personally and professionally?
Well, I guess it's going to be so we're working on this regenerative side of it, and on this flour business, flour and grain and oil business, and it takes a lot to do some of that. So to me, it's to try to have some sizable volume into that, and that's kind of the means behind some of the goals, the family goals. My son is going to be going to university, and our daughters are helping with that part of the business, the flour side of it, and trying to see how do we bring him on, and getting to that spot where it's the teeter-totter, where I'm 45 and just getting, okay, now it's got to go to the other side of it's starting to be more intentional into seeing that transition, and see, are they going to take it on, or are they going to do other things elsewhere, and doing other things elsewhere would be fine too. I want them to be fulfilled in their life, and I want them to find the same level of passion that I've been able to experience, and so I don't want them to be locked into farm or flour business. I'd like them to flourish wherever they are, and to me, that's probably where that's what I want. I want them the most on that side of it, and for us, I guess it's just kind of keeping going with that. People are asking me, is Montana the last place? And I said, well, best predictor of future is past behavior. Future behavior is past behavior.
Yeah.
So who knows? I mean, there could be other opportunities. Who knows what could happen? So far, it looks like that's where it will be, and yeah, but yeah, I wonder where we're going as a as a world right now with so many of the supply chain issues and different things. I still think in North America it's hard to beat where we live, and I think we'll be fine, probably somewhat with a few scars here and there, but we'll be fine.
Well, we are very fortunate, and I think looking back at everything that you've done, you should pause at times and rest a bit and recognize a life well lived, a very full life, because it's maybe difficult in some of those moments. And I think I can see that often you have these self-talks maybe where, why am I such a dreamer? Why did I get into this position? I mean, you put yourself in some tough spots, my friend. You put yourself in some tough spots, but isn't that what grows character and wisdom and a life worth living?
Well, I think that's just one gets the other, and then it's like steps on stairs, right? You just get to that step, and sometimes it's a much bigger one you wanted to take, but you had to. Sometimes you push back a couple you down a couple steps and bruised a bit, and that's what gets you to find out what you can and can't do, and go forward again. So. Absolutely. Well, just like we said a little bit earlier, chaos brings opportunity, and these opportunities have been really good in the past. Usually they're good, and the failures have made us stronger, have taught us a whole bunch of things, and have also got us to meet people along the way that were very, very influential, and yeah, these connections, yeah, are what you take along is when you get to a trade show and you get Buddy Dan out there, and you can talk for a while, and then you go you walk another 30 feet and you see this guy, and so on, and they all plug in. They're part of your ecosystem of people you can that have been influential, or have been helpful, have been inspirational as well. These are I just look at what your family is doing, Terry, and yourself, and just have got huge respect for your dad and what he has done as well. And when I hear the introduction to the podcast and all these companies, I just say, hey, maybe I should pick it up a little bit and get something.
I gotta going. And then you hear your bio, and it's like you need to take a nap. You're feeling motivated, and then you're feeling exhausted. Like, whoa, I deserve a pit stop here. But the other thing about the Eberhard family is we live in the best watershed in planet Earth, Smith Creek watershed. Remember, like you were very involved.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that part.
When it rains, it's like shit through a goose right into the.
The Smith Creek.
Yeah, that'll bring back some memories.
Meetings. Yeah. It should be. We can do a whole podcast on that. Yeah, and I've got a few ideas on some of the participants that could be part of it.
Well, we didn't even touch on it, but drainage and sort of land improvement is a huge passion of yours, and you even presented one year at Ag in Motion on our stage there. So,
yeah.
I just can't help but think that our listener today with us, virtually somehow in the crazy technology world that we are fortunate enough to inhabit, was touched and inspired by what you shared. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way to get a hold of you or learn more about what Franck Groeneweg is up to in the air?
So I'm available by email at Franck, spelled Franck. Yeah, a lot of people always forget the C there, and it's really like there are other people. There are other words that start with an F and with CK, like fire truck. And so it's Franck, Franck, at livingskygrains.com. Our website is livingskygrains.com, where you can find all kinds of nutritious flour and chickpea flour, garbanzo beans, whole berry wheats as well. And we'll be putting some canola oil on it soon. And I don't know, should I give my cell number?
Yeah, I mean, it's like start ringing off the hook the minute we publish. But sure, if you like, why not? I mean, because the cool thing is, I think everybody needs to recognize, Frank is living some of what he's talking about here: the carbon capture, the micronutrient investment in the plant, the more nutrient rich, getting away from fertilizers and chemicals. You're doing it, so maybe some producers want to know more about what you're doing. So give them your cell number.
All right, 406-521-5234.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, my friend. It's so rewarding to be able to do this. I was thinking as I came in this morning and was scrambling to set up everything again after moving the equipment and stuff like that. Man, it is my honor to have these conversations, and I hope maybe one day, I hope a lot of people enjoy them, but I know one day too, I'll be, twice as old or whatever, maybe 3 times as old if things go well. And I'll be able to listen to some back of the, listen to these shows and remember my good friend Frank, and hopefully we're around long enough to get there. But it means a lot to me, man.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I'm honored to do this, and because I see the great lineup of people you've had, and if I can just bring a few nuggets of something that somebody would like to hear, well, I'm pleased to do that. So I really thank you for the opportunity. And in some ways, it's just like you said, it's we put something in time here that's recorded. And, a few years from now, you can start to listen to it. And I've had the opportunity to do that on different things, maybe. And you just say, whoa, that's the guy that I was. And, there are things that really like about that guy. It's something I wish I could just tell him, like, you are wrong, buddy.
Back to the Future.
But
that's where we needed DeLorean.
But please keep...
Yeah.
But please keep going, because you're going to learn so much out of that. So
I know.
Yeah.
Season
that
4.
whole Back to the Future. Yeah.
Good for you. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. You take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
You have a great one.
Appreciate it.